Chapter 20. Lucas stood near an airport terminal. There were small vehicles carrying luggage to and from passenger planes, and dozens of men with neon orange vests rushing back and forth. Planes of various sizes approached the terminal, and large jet bridges being attached or unattached from the doors on the sides, depending on whether the flights were arriving or departing. The full unbroken moon and the blue tint immediately gave away that he was having a vision. Lucas's attention was captured as a small private plane began taxiing to a small hangar a short distance away. "That's the Senator's flight," came a voice on the radio of a small vehicle next to him. He hopped inside as a man in an orange vest drove to the hangar. Lucas frowned as the small electric vehicle sped across the dark asphalt. He had yet to determine why senators were appearing in visions, or what he was supposed to learn from these visions. He wondered if it mattered at all what he had learned, or whether there was an immovable destiny that would pull him toward his fate, willing or otherwise. The small vehicle slowed gradually as it approached the small jet. The hatch on the side opened, and a set of steps expanded down. "Senator Jacob Wilson," shouted the man that had driven the small luggage vehicle. A weary-looking Senator Wilson emerged from the plane and stepped down onto the ground. "Travis, it's good to see you," said Senator Wilson. "Where's Mr. Crenshaw?" asked Travis. He started the senator. "He ended up being a demon worshipper, and he tried to kill me." "What?" gasped Travis. "He deceived us all," said the senator. "I was fortunate to escape with my life." "I'm sorry," said Travis. "It's not your fault, Travis," said the senator with a weary smile on his face. "Never mind about that, though. Let's get something to eat." Lucas had to admit that he admired the positivity that seemed to come from Senator Wilson. It reminded him a bit of Sig. As Lucas's mind wandered in thought, the world began spinning and swirling. Lucas felt nauseated and dizzy for a moment, but after closing his eyes and breathing deeply, his senses calmed. The scene gradually refocused and returned to normal. He suddenly found himself standing near a booth in a dimly lit restaurant where Travis and Senator Wilson were seated. There was a large white tablecloth on the table, underneath several oval-shaped plates of varying size. Most of the meal had been eaten, and only a few scraps of bread and smears of tomato sauces and dressings remained. The green vinyl seats in the booth had high backs, contributing to the appearance that they were isolated. Although there were other people set at tables closer to the exit, they were too far away to hear. They watched waitresses hurrying between them with beverages of various colors for a few moments. "So, are you going to report this to the Senate?" asked Travis at last. Lucas returned his attention to his associate. "No," replied the senator. "I think this needs to stay quiet for now. Panic is what led to the Dallas nuke." "Well, yes, but that was centuries ago," said Travis. "I would like to think we've come a long ways since Civil War II. Lucas scratched his head. He thought the idea of naming a war was a bit odd, but he decided that if there were enough peacetime in between fighting, it might make sense to name them. "I would have thought so too, but then my chief of security revealed himself to be a demon worshipper," replied the senator. "That's also a little confusing," said Travis. "I mean, why reveal that at all?" "I wondered that too," said the senator. "It was only after I was certain that I had found the right place that he confessed to being an agent of the demon prophetess." "Demon prophetess?" asked Travis. "So the demon lords are coming out of hiding? With the council in disarray, it's even more important to try not to draw hasty conclusions," said the senator. "Promise me that you'll keep this to yourself, Travis. Give me some time to continue my investigation." "Of course, Senator," replied Travis sincerely. "What are you going to do next?" "I'm going to send a pilot down to Antarctica," said the senator. There was a brief pause before the scene once again swirled around, ending Lucas's vision. He sat up with a start and opened his eyes. He felt cold. It had been nice to be free of discomfort in his visions, and a part of him wished he could go back, if only to have relief from the wind. Though he had a thick coat, the moisture and the wind seemed to cut right through. He wondered if his clothing had completely dried, even though it had been days since he had come to the shore. "So do you know where Jonathan is yet?" came an impatient-sounding female voice from behind him. He turned. It was Kirana. "No," said Lucas. Kirana sighed in frustration. "Well, let's get going then," said Kirana. Lucas reluctantly got up, trying to massage feeling back into his numb limbs. Kirana pulled a white scarf over her face and pulled her coat tightly. She began moving ahead on the cold, rocky terrain towards a paved highway. Though they had not seen any vehicles, they had decided it was best not to make camp on a road, just in case someone decided moving south was a smart idea, even in the perpetual dark. Lucas's legs felt stiff, but he tried to follow after Kirana. She seemed oblivious to his discomfort and had a fairly quick pace. "Hurry up," called Kirana. Lucas scowled in frustration, but he tried to move his short legs quickly. Unfortunately, after a few steps, he stumbled on a rock and crashed into the ground. Small rocks scraped his face as he fell on the cold earth. At first he tried to get up, but in his effort, his hands slipped and he fell again. "Lucas?" called Kirana. Lucas clenched his bleeding fists in anger. He had hit his breaking point. He wanted to focus on his vision. He was cold, he was exhausted, and he did not appreciate Kirana's direction. He sat up and crossed his legs. Kirana turned back and noticed he was not moving. "Lucas, get up here," shouted Kirana. "No," shouted Lucas. Kirana tilted her head as though she could not believe what she had heard. "What did you say?" asked Kirana. "I said no," repeated Lucas. "Go on yourself if you want, but I need rest." Kirana furrowed her brow as she walked next to Lucas. She took a deep breath to try and control her emotions before she spoke, but her tone was still icy. "Lucas, I understand that we are in a difficult situation right now," started Kirana. "Shut up, Kirana," shouted Lucas. "Go find your boyfriend. That's all you care about." Kirana slapped Lucas across the face. "Leave me alone," shouted Lucas angrily. Kirana got up and paced back and forth for a few moments before speaking. "So you just want to stay here?" shouted Kirana. "You don't care about Jonathan or Victor or Sig or Stephanie?" Lucas narrowed his eyes and lowered his voice. "Will my caring bring them back?" asked Lucas. "Did my caring stop Daniel from turning into a monster? Did your caring keep Jonathan from being dragged off by demon worshippers? Did our caring keep the world from twisting to create hot and cold zones, or keep the moon from being sliced apart? If he is destined to live, then he will live. If the others are destined to die, I don't see how pushing beyond my limits will change what is going to happen." Kirana grabbed her key, and her eyes glowed brightly. Lucas backed up nervously as Kirana's key grew into a massive fiery katana. She stuck it into the ground next to him, startling him silent. "You may be smarter than me, Lucas," said Kirana in a low voice. "You may be a lot smarter than me. I admit I don't know about destiny or whether anything we are doing can change time. Of course, I have looked at the world, and I have seen the face of evil. We have both seen real evil. But look at this blade. Look at the mirrored key under your coat, Lucas." As Lucas looked down, a mixture of guilt and frustration swirled about inside him, and like soup that had been left unattended in a pan, it began to bubble up and out. Tears welled up and fell down his cheeks. He began sobbing softly. "Lucas, these divine keys," said Kirana, "they are like a sign. They are telling us that even though there are a lot of bad things in the world and a lot of crap is stacked up against us, there is something or someone that is looking out for us. Evil may be real, but so is good. Lucas wiped his eyes and breathed deeply. He had never expected Kirana to provide comfort to anyone, but he found truth and solace in her words, and soothing from the warmth of her burning blade. He reached into his coat and pulled out his mirrored key. His eyes began glowing for a few seconds. "I know where they took him," said Lucas. Kirana smiled and picked up her sword. It morphed back into a key, and she stowed it again under her white cloak. Lucas got to his feet. The pain from the scrapes on his face and hands faded as the cold wind blew against him. He shivered slightly, but began walking toward the road. "There's a shed a couple miles north," said Lucas. "We should move quickly." Kirana pulled her scarf over her mouth and nose as they began moving toward the road. The pair remained silent as they walked. Though it was dark, the tops of small hills could be seen in the distance. The branches of trees that were sparsely scattered provided some variety along the road. The moons provided illumination of the chipped white and yellow paint on the roads, indicating the lane divisions. As Lucas had predicted, after a couple miles, they saw a shed off of the main road. They slowed their pace as they approached, partly because it was difficult to walk through the knee-height grass, and partly because they were watching for any traps. The same moonlight that had illuminated the path they walked now made Kirana's white cloak glow. She tried to crouch lower as she walked to reduce the odds that an enemy might spot her, but she felt like she stood out. "There's a guard up by the door," whispered Lucas. A huge bolt of fire flew down from the general direction of the shack and exploded in the grass near Kirana. "Kirana!" said Lucas as she rushed behind a tree for cover. She turned toward him. Even in the darkness, she could tell there was a small smirk on his face. "I think they saw you," he said with a laugh. She rolled her eyes, but she was secretly glad that Lucas seemed to be feeling better. She pulled out her key and ignited it with bright fire. Lucas could hear gasps from the guard at the door and rushed to flank the enemy. Kirana's fiery sword absorbed another pair of fire bolts. The intimidated guard turned around to find Lucas rushing toward him. He jumped with a start. Lucas kicked the guard as hard as he could in the groin. The guard buckled over and groaned as Kirana pointed her fiery blade at him. "Please," begged the guard, "don't hurt me." Lucas kicked open the door of the shack to find it empty. "He's gone," said Lucas. Kirana grabbed the fire demon acolyte by his robe and pressed her blade closer to his tattooed face. "Where did your prisoner get taken?" said Kirana in a low voice. "Wait," cried the guard. "I can help you find him." "So in other words, you don't know," thundered Kirana. I just mean," stuttered the acolyte nervously, "they're taking him to our master." "David Sawyer?" asked Kirana. "They're going to sacrifice him?" No," stuttered the acolyte. "Lord Hellfire went into hiding. Our new master is named Angelica Sterling." "What does she want with him?" said Kirana. "The others that took him think she might be interested in using his mind control powers," said the guard. Of course, they had no way of knowing, but as they spoke, a group of acolytes in red cloaks had just arrived in the remains of the broken arena, where Angelica Sterling's tournament had been disrupted by the other Divine Key Guardians. Her dark red ponytail swung back and forth as she shot huge bolts of flames at various walls in anger. "Master," called out one of the acolytes. "What is it?" screamed Angelica in a rage. "We brought someone that might be useful to you," said the acolyte. The others threw an unconscious Jonathan Knight on the ground before her. "Why would I care about—" started Angelica. Then she noticed the mirrored key on the chain about his neck. She stooped down and touched it. "He seems to have replaced Joshua Beckman," said the acolyte. "We thought his powers might be useful to you, Master." "Yes," laughed Angelica. "Yes, I think you may be right."